folks, Peppa Boris here, doing another replay and analysis of a game from the 2025 Through the Ages World Championship. This is round one, the second four-player game. This one is going to be long, and if you get bored, I don't have any hard feelings towards you about that, but do please click the link in the description to skip to the end. I'll post a link there to where things go nuts, because this one has a wild finish. My opponents lose their minds. Anyway, let's start. So Sheeter is first in this game and grabs Engineering Genius A from the front row. I would have loved this when I was the first player in the other game. Here he had two solid wonders to choose from, or the Engineering Genius. Now, I think taking Engineering Genius makes perfect sense, because if you take one of these wonders, then the second player gets to take the other one with the Engineering Genius, and that feels bad. Plus, these aren't like, you know, the Pyramids or Library of Alexandria. They're fine. They're definitely playable. You shouldn't, like, ignore them or anything, but they're just not so amazing that you want to hand your second opponent an amazing draft on a silver platter. So Sakic, with this dilemma, decides to take Alexander the Great, and I think that makes perfect sense. I like him. I think it's great to get an extra yellow token in the bank, and these wonders are fine, but since there isn't a good yellow card to take alongside them, I think it makes sense just to say, well, let me just take the leader that's good. Then we go to Gangwon Teacher, and he has a nice selection here. He decides Acropolis and Urban Growth from this area. Urban Growth, Rich Land, and Engineering Genius, in case you don't know, being the kind of like decent yellow cards to take, and everything else is sort of borderline. Here, I'm fine with this play. I think that Acropolis, I do prefer it over Stonehenge, just because it costs one less rock and has two fewer stages. It's more flexible, and considering they're both decent, I'll prefer the one that has more flexibility. Now, on my turn as the fourth player, I'm just going to grab the Pyramids, because that's the best wonder here. And I also take Cultural Heritage. One thing to note, whatever card is in this spot, I think that's the one you should take here. Because watch what happens when we flip over to Sheeter's turn, and it's the Middle Ages. Notice how on his turn, all the leaders, and he still needs a leader, are in the second row. Had I taken the Patriotism or whatever card had been in that spot, then Homer would have been here. Now you might say, well, Homer's not that amazing. Yeah, I mean, if that Patriotism had been an actual good card, like Richland, Urban Growth, or Engineering Genius, then yeah, I would have taken it and let him have the Homer for one action. But as it is, since I was taking junk no matter what, might as well give him a hard choice. Now, you put Stonehenge under construction, which is fine. If it were me here, I would take Cleopatra. I do think that she's a really fantastic Age A leader, and these are all fine, but she's my favorite, and I would just suck it up and take it. But Sheeter has other plans. What he decides to do is build a mine, which is fine, raise population, which is fine, and grab Frugality for a free food, which is fine, but at least it doesn't cost an extra action. So he says, yeah, you know, I'll just take a leader later and not spend an extra action now, which I think is okay. It's not what I would do, but it's fine if you want to play that way. I don't think it's like a huge blunder. Sakic plays Alexander the Great. He builds a mine, and he puts Hanging Gardens under construction. Now, this is a wonder that we all love to hate, because, again, the second Happy Face is useless for a long time. The extra food on completion that was added like 10 years after the game first came out to make this wonder stronger sometimes causes corruption issues. It's just, you know, not a beloved wonder. Also, it leaves you wide open to Ravages of Time, where if you lose this to that event, you lose two Happy Faces all of a sudden, and it's just a horrifying nightmare. But I do think Sakic made the right call here, because there's nothing else to do, and I think not taking it just because it's a bad wonder is a mistake. So he takes it. I think that's completely fine. He is at risk of missing out on a worker-based Age A event, but I think I would have actually made the same play here myself. All right, Gangwon Teacher on his turn takes Homer. Now, I'm going to pause here. I'm not saying this is a mistake, but I personally would have taken either Sun Tzu or Aristotle. The problem with Homer is that he reduces your flexibility, because you can't replace him until you have your wonder built. And put a bookmark on that. It ends up being really significant later in this game. With Sun Tzu, you draw extra cards, and I think when you're offered this leader, it's worth looking at who the other leaders are to see if there's synergy. And honestly, there's just like a lot of leaders that have synergy with him. So Christopher Columbus and Isabella of Castile really want to draw colonies, more so Columbus, and you're more likely to get them with Sun Tzu. Eleanor of Aquitaine, when you replace Sun Tzu with her, you actually end up getting 2 extra points because you're discarding 2 extra cards, and you're more likely to have been able to fill your hand with events so that you can actually use her ability. And Genghis Khan, you often want a tactic involving cavalry, and you're more likely to find one if you have Sun Tzu. And these aren't like the only ones that have synergy. There's like a lot of leaders that have, moderate synergy with Sun Tzu because they care about finding something from the military deck. I would have taken Sun Tzu here and put a bookmark on this Homer situation. We're going to come back to that later. Other than that, though, his turn is perfectly normal. He plays his leader, he builds a lab with urban growth A, and raises his population. Completely standard stuff. Good times. On my turn, I have Cleopatra available for one action, which is incredibly lucky. I mean, I do get a much luckier start this game than in the other game. I take her, I play her, I build a lab using her ability. It's questionable whether that's actually correct. It may be correct just to build the mine anyway. But I go for the lab, I like the extra science, raise population, pass the turn. Back to Sheeter's first real turn here. He plays an event, we all get 2 food, and he grabs Sun Tzu, which is perfectly fine. I might prefer Boudica over Sun Tzu. I prefer the resources over the cards, but Sun Tzu is a perfectly reasonable play here. After taking Sun Tzu, he plays him, builds a stage of Stonehenge, and raises population. Now, he doesn't use frugality because that would make him corrupt. I will say, I would have preferred to build a lab here over one stage of the wonder. I mean, I respect it's a 4-stage wonder, getting it started, trying to get it done, but this is a wonder that gives you a science for every rock spent to build it. Whereas this lab gives you a science every single turn permanently. So this is temporary science versus permanent science. I think it's correct to build the lab first and then work on the wonder. That's just my opinion, but it's not crazy either way. Solid turn overall, and we pass the turn. Now, Sakic, I think, actually does miss something on his turn. So what he does is he raises population. Let's pause for a second here. So after raising population, oh, by the way, he also, he cashed out Alexander, which is something a lot of people don't do, but I do it as well. Sakic is very much like me in some turns. So he just cashes him out immediately, which is totally fine, I think. Now, what do you do from here? Well, I think with your last 3 actions, you can make a kind of standard line where you just build a lab and raise population twice. That's perfectly fine. But something worth considering is taking Gutenberg. Now, Gutenberg's not really that great of an Age 1 leader because if you don't have alchemy and printing press, or printing press specifically, then he kind of does nothing. But in this particular case, you could actually use him to build your Age A lab. So Sakic could have done this turn from here with his last 3 actions of take Gutenberg, play Gutenberg, free action, build a lab for 2 rocks, get out of corruption, and still have an action left over to raise population again. That would have been my play, even though he's not the best leader. I think, alchemy's here. Maybe it'll wheel. Even if it doesn't, there is, in a 4-player game, 2 other alchemies and 2 printing presses. And you just had Alexander, so you have an extra yellow token in your bank, so you're more capable of using a worker to do something frivolous like a printing press, and your wonder is Hanging Gardens, giving you a happy face, so you're actually in tremendously good shape for getting a printing press, which is normally a bit of a luxury technology that's a mistake to make. And on top of that, in Age 2, we do have Shakespeare and Gaudi, both of whom love printing presses. So I would have gone for the Gutenberg play. I do think Sakic biffed it here by not taking him. And I also think if you don't take him, it's correct to just build a lab and raise population twice. But he spends 2 actions after building a lab to take Code of Laws. And I do think this is an error. This is 6 science. It's a huge commitment. Yes, getting an extra action is great, but you're spending 1, 2, 3 actions to play it. So it's going to be 4 turns before you actually get ahead on actions. And you're leaving yourself without a worker, which risks missing out on Age A events. And again, the science commitment is huge here before you've developed any economy. I'm not a fan of this move. Not saying it's horrible, but I personally would not recommend this. All right, Gang 1 builds a mine. And it's worth noting, he could have also done this Gutenberg thing. Could have taken Gutenberg, played him. Oh, wait a minute. What am I talking about? Nope, I'm wrong. He built a mine, not a lab. Okay, so Gang 1 does not have the option to do Gutenberg because he's already built his lab. So he builds his mine. Scratch all that from the record, please. Raises population. And then what to do with these last 2 actions? I think taking alchemy is very reasonable. It's a great technology. He's got the science to do it next turn. I think it's an absolutely solid turn. All right, on my turn, since I used Cleopatra to build a lab early, I also can't really use Gutenberg. I make an open borders agreement with Sakic. I offer it, and I think he's correct in accepting it, so each of us now has an extra military action. Why Sakic? Well, Gang 1's Wonder gives him a strength, And Sheeter has an extra strength from his leader, so you want to try, if possible, to pick someone to offer to offer the open borders agreement to, who has 2 military actions and no strength bonuses sitting around. All right, so I built a mine. Now you could take Gutenberg or Leonardo here. After I raise population, I actually have nothing else to do. So I could take like a speculative rich land and play cultural heritage, or take one of these mediocre leaders and play cultural heritage. Both of them are conditional on getting alchemy or printing press, which, yes, there's a printing press here. But I am actually not in great position to use printing press because I don't have happy faces and I didn't get an extra yellow token in my bank. And I don't actually care about playing this stupid card. So I just take 2 actions to play Eleanor. She's an amazing leader. Culture and cards, and you get 3 actions back when you replace her. Honestly, even without that, I think she would be good enough to take to spend for 2 actions here. So I was happy to get her. I wish she had been one of these 2, but then again, maybe if she had been, Gangwon would have taken her. So I think taking her for 2 actions here when there's not much else to do is perfectly fine, and I pass the turn. All right, so Sheeter goes, plays an event. We all get a free action with a discount, and on his turn, he takes a very principled line. He builds the Stonehenge Wonder, and that means he's not building his lab, but again, it's not like horrible. I wouldn't recommend this. I do think you should build the lab before you build the Stonehenge, but this way he does have a huge amount of science. In case monarchy comes up, he's ready to go with it. And now the only issue is what to do with his last turn. Well, I actually think he should have taken Gutenberg. He could have taken Gutenberg, replaced Sun Tzu as a free action, built his lab as a free action and used these 2 rocks, and he still could have finished the Wonder. So he could have actually built the lab and the Wonder this turn, and then had Gutenberg out. His Wonder is giving him a happy face, so he does have an extra worker to use with this printing press that's very likely to wheel to him for a single action next time. So I think that's actually 2 players, Sakic and Sheeter, who just passed on Gutenberg maybe because he's a quote-unquote weak leader. This is one of my axes to grind in Through the Ages. I think people are so hung up on like evaluating cards and tier ranking the leaders and tier ranking the wonders that they miss what's really important, which is not how strong is this generally, but rather how strong is it in this specific situation that you're in. And I think in this specific situation, Gutenberg was pretty strong. He grabs a speculative rich land, passes the turn, and we're on to Sakic. Sakic plays an event. It's development of planning. I do want to pause for a second to look at that event. So we had the option of a free population increase, free warrior, or 1 science, 1 rock, 1 food. Sakic chose a rock, food, and science. I do think that was a mistake. I get why he did it. He still had a worker here, so the development of settlement was not giving him 3 foods worth of value, but only 2 foods. But I think still, like, the fact that you get a worker out of your bank is a extra action, and when you only have 4 actions, like, getting an extra one is pretty good. I think that was better than getting a food, rock, and science, because you're still getting 2 food. It's just that instead of a food and an action, you're getting a rock and a science. That would make sense if you have something to do in the short term with that rock and science, but he doesn't here. He just raises population, builds a warrior, and takes knights. So like these science and the rock aren't doing anything. I mean, if he had gotten up to 6 science and could have made Code of Laws this turn, that would have been one thing. I also disagree with taking knights here. I don't think knights is worth spending 2 actions on. And, well, what else was there for him to do? That's debatable. But he could have built a stage of this wonder that he needs to build, and he could have taken Gutenberg. So he had things to do. In fact, he didn't even have to raise his population. He could have not raised population the second time. He would have not been corrupt, because he would have put a rock on the wonder and a rock back here. So if you take away 3 of these blues for the population gain, put 1 of these on the wonder, put 1 in the bank, you're still not corrupt. So he could have taken and played Gutenberg and then grabbed this printing press for a single action. So it's possible instead of taking these knights. But anyways, he chose to go for the knights, pass the turn, and we go over to Mr. Gangwon. So Gangwon builds a stage of the Acropolis. He's 1 short of being able to build the Wonder. And now he takes Leonardo, which is completely fine, because Leonardo and Alchemy, I mean, if you get Alchemy, Leonardo is really, really incredible. But look at the situation. If he had any leader besides Homer, literally any leader besides Homer here, he could have replaced him with Leonardo as a free action, researched Alchemy, gotten a rock from Leo, and then upgraded a lab, going up to 4 science. That just is incredible. Look at how many cards are in the deck. This early alchemy with Leonardo generating 4 science per turn is incredibly strong. But because he has Homer and needs to finish the wonder before replacing Homer, he can't do this. And look at the sad turn he has to take. I mean, there's nothing for him to do. He takes a really sad turn here. He takes theology and reserves. I mean, barf. Instead of Leonardo with alchemy right now. I think that's actually so strong, and this move ends up being so weak, and I don't have a better one to offer him. I would have actually just replaced Homer. Like, screw it. Yeah, we don't get the permanent happy face, but I'm not in revolt. I have this extra worker here. I mean, this is just too good to not do. All right, he builds a warrior, and he passes the turn. It's over to me. So on my turn, I am kind of ruining the fact I spent 2 actions for Eleanor because Genghis shows up at the 1 action spot, which is incredibly lucky. I don't think my opponent's made a mistake. He's right at the edge of this here, but I think it's incredibly lucky to have this happen, and I can't even take advantage of it. Genghis, I just think, is so ridiculously strong because you get 3 culture per turn. I mean, yes, that can get shut off, but it's not a high barrier to get over to be getting 3 culture per turn, and that is just so ridiculously strong. It costs you nothing except for your leader slot, and you can just carry on building economy while getting 3 culture per turn. But I can't do it. I got Eleanor here. So I make the most of it. We take irrigation because there's really garbage here for me to do, and I'm still not in good position for printing press. You might say, hey, Boris, take bread and circuses for your happy faces. That's fair. That is fair. But I decide to get food production for an extra action. And then I play the cultural heritage. I'm not replacing Cleopatra. I'm wrong, actually. I didn't play Eleanor this turn because I still wanted to use Cleopatra's Rock to help me build the pyramids next turn. All right, I throw away a card, get some new cards, and it's back over to Sheeter. And he gets Genghis Khan for a single action. And he wasn't even the first person to have a crack at it. This is actually very lucky, the 2 science for Sheeter. Because, or sorry, not Sheeter, but for Sakic. Actually, no, he was at 9. Never mind. It's fine. He was going to be able to get Code of Laws regardless. I misremembered that. So Sheeter plays the Fighting Band, which is going to be uncopyable until Sun Tzu leaves play. But then he just takes Genghis Khan and replaces Sun Tzu with him. And so now Sheeter is just annihilating us on culture. He's getting 4 culture per turn. Okay, there's this text here. He's getting 4 culture per turn, and no one else is getting any yet. So it is a little bit of a disgusting thing. If you don't pay attention to this, the game will snowball out of your control. Now, Sheeter also puts the Taj Mahal under construction for free because he replaced a leader this turn. This I do question. He has no economy. He hasn't even built a second lab. Personally, I wouldn't go for this. Now, you might say, okay, Boris, hotshot, what are you doing if not that? Well, taking Taj Mahal under construction doesn't really solve that problem because it doesn't cost any actions to do right now. So regardless, there was nothing to do with these 3 actions, and whether you take Taj Mahal or not, that doesn't change. I would have considered here, though, taking printing press and building one of them instead of my second lab. I mean, this would never happen to me, but okay, let's say I just for some reason go nuts and never build my second lab. Build your second printing press instead of that lab and push the culture even higher. Because it's the same. It's a worker to the lab or worker to the printing press. What you're paying is 3 science and the 2 actions to take in research printing press, but you're generating a culture alongside the science. You're opening yourself up to Gaudi and Shakespeare, potentially, and you're going up to suddenly 5 culture per turn versus your opponent's 0, so you're running away with it. And I don't want to commit myself to having to spend 8 rocks when I have no economy building Taj Mahal. But Sheeter wants to play it frisky. He goes for Taj Mahal. And for the second, or for his remaining actions, he builds a lab. What do you do with your last 2 actions? Well, he grabs warfare. Now, this I'm not a big fan of. He does have a lot of science, but this is temporary science. And warfare is a really expensive technology. I don't think it gives enough here. So what would I have done instead? Well, you could, instead of building an AJ lab, spend 3 actions and take alchemy and just fix your science. It's aggressive. I don't know that I would have the balls to do that, but you could. You also, of course, have the printing press research move, which would eat up some of your actions as well. In any case, Sheeter passes the turn, and we're over to Sakic. So Sakic plays an event. We get some free resources. He gets to do Code of Laws. And now, what do you do with the rest of your actions? This is a tough one. He doesn't have any science to research stuff, but he does have a wonder to build. So what he decides to do, though, is hold off on the wonder and grab alchemy. I think that's fair. And then he does get 2 stages of the wonder build. He then makes a warrior to avoid corruption. I don't like building this many warriors, but fine, you're avoiding corruption, so I think it's fair. I mean, it's either throw the rocks away or make a warrior out of them. Fine. Decent turn. You could have finished your Hanging Gardens here, but I think taking Alchemy is all right. Gang 1 plays an event. We all get a free temple. He finishes the Acropolis, which is fine. He can now replace Homer, research Alchemy, and upgrade to a lab going up to 4 science. You know, it's a turn or 2 later, but hey, this is pretty strong stuff. He is now getting 2 culture per turn. Okay, we all got a temple, so we can say he's getting 1 culture per turn from the Acropolis, sticking, you know, not too far away from... Okay, it's still pretty far away from Sheeter's... what is Sheeter making? Still pretty far away from Sheeter's 4, but hey, you know, it's something. So on my turn, I finished the pyramids. It's time to get rid of Cleopatra. She's done her job. And what to do next? Well, this is a case where maybe I should have taken Code of Laws and played it. If I take Code of Laws and play it here, my civil actions are solved for the game. I don't need to worry about that anymore. 6 is enough to make it through the rest of the game. I do have a big cache of science here. Yeah, I have no economy, so I'm just kind of like paying everything for civil actions, but that is a possibility. There's nothing here that's really good. I don't want to try to build the 9 rock wonder when I have no economy and I'm still at 3 bronze mines. So what I decided to do is, you know, a typical Boris move. I research irrigation, upgrade it. I don't actually upgrade it a second time though. Since things are getting a little scary here with the strength, and remember, I have open borders with Sakic, so if he attacks me, his strength is actually 5. I do have the defense cards to block it, but, you know, it's just a little uncomfortable. I decided to actually make a worker here, or a warrior. So I have an action left over with which I take the rich land to upgrade this for free. So I'm kind of saving 2 rocks in exchange for like getting 1 less food. And this tactic, which is going to go into the common pool next round, I'm ready to take it and add 2 to my strength. Okay, so I throw some cards away. I do get some culture here from Eleanor. It's hidden culture, but, you know, I'm dropping 2 cards every turn, 3 if I play an event. So I am actually sort of keeping up with Sheeter a little bit. Sheeter plays an event. It's Barbarians. Luckily, this does absolutely nothing, so no harm done. He takes Code of Laws. He does have a lot of science, so it makes sense to play it, fix his actions a bit. He's 1 off from being able to finish the Taj Mahal this turn. But he takes irrigation for 2 actions. Now here, I don't know. It's not terrible to ever take irrigation. And he does have the science for the irrigation and the warfare. But I'm uncomfortable with all these resources. Personally, I would have preferred to build 2 stages of the Taj Mahal and raise population. Here, he raises population, and now he has corruption because he took irrigation, so he makes a warrior here. And I'm not a fan of this because there's a way to avoid corruption otherwise, and I am not a fan of building a bunch of warriors. So we're on to Sakic's turn. He plays an event. It's border conflict. It stinks. I'm the weakest player, so I have to blow up a building. Luckily, it could have been worse. What I'm able to do is basically blow up this farm and then play rich land. So it just cost me 2 rocks. It doesn't cost me an action to rebuild the building. I mean, still 2 rocks when I make 3 per turn is horrible. But hey, what can you do? So Sakic finishes building the Hanging Gardens. And now what to do with the rest of his turn. There's kind of just nothing but crap here. Even if you say, okay, let's just do Boris-style gameplay and just use up your actions. Well, there's actually not much to do. You don't have enough rocks to upgrade alchemy, so you can raise population. I guess you could research alchemy for the future, and you still have 2 actions to burn through. Now here, one thing I would consider is taking Swordsman, because this is a really good tech. You've got 3 warriors. This gives you the option for 3 rocks and 3 actions over time to bump up your strength by 3. I think that's really strong. Now, what Sakic decides to do after raising his population is he actually grabs and plays Christopher Columbus. On the surface, that does kind of make sense because you're spending 2 actions in a constructive way to play a leader. But this is a leader that is just really annoying because you really want to play an Age 2 colony with Columbus, but you're not guaranteed to get one. And it really feels like anytime you're playing through the ages and you don't take Columbus, you're just drowning in colonies. But as soon as you take the guy, it's like all the colonies evaporate and fly off to Mars. They're just nowhere to be found. So it's a gamble, and I'm not a fan of taking this gamble. And we'll put a bookmark on this because that is something we're going to return to later, his decision to take Columbus. Now, you could take Barbarossa, the leader that everybody ignores. I do think he's kind of weak here because he's already made a bunch of warriors and probably doesn't want to make any more. But, I mean, he does have knights, so he could actually have taken Barbarossa, played Barbarossa, and then for a military action, gotten a worker out of his pool and used these last 2 rocks to make a knight. What is a knight doing here? Nothing, but it was something that he could have done. It's worth considering. I would have still taken swordsman over either of these leaders, and I guess researched swordsman and upgraded one or something for my action usage. Here he grabs an urban growth, which, okay, that makes sense. That's going to help him build alchemy. Nothing wrong with that. He adopts the Sun Tzu-powered fighting band for 2 strength, and he passes the turn. All right, it's Gang Wan's turn. He plays an event. Why not, right? He's not the weakest. Might as well fling him out there. Immigration, so Sakich with his Hanging Gardens gets an extra population. Gang Wan, smart man, takes swordsman. I respect it. What to do with the rest of your actions? Well, plenty. You can raise population. You can upgrade a lab. He decides to grab iron, which is fine with huge science production. Might as well get your rocks going. You could say, hey, the age is almost ending. Let's just roll with it and not do that. That's also fine. And then he raises population to avoid corruption. He also takes the fighting band, and now I'm the loner here. I'm in extra vulnerable state because Sakich could do an aggression on me, and he would be 5 ahead of me if he did that, so I have to be a little bit careful. I play an event, and it's Scientific Breakthrough. We all get some free science. Gang 1 gets the most. I build a farm for 2 rocks because I had to lose something to the border conflict, and now what to do with 4 actions? Well, we have alchemy here. We have printing press and drama as a package deal, ready to go for Shakespeare or Gaudi, either one. I think it's a pretty strong play. It's worth considering. I didn't go for that. I was kind of timid. I think overall in the 4-player games, I played fairly timidly. I was just trying to play, good, clean, solid through the ages, and I think I may have been a little bit too timid. I think you really have to consider taking printing press and drama here because it's really, really strong and crazy culture production if you can get them with Shakespeare or Gaudi. Either one is a really good combo with both of these techs, especially if you have irrigation online and you're able to pump some workers out. But I take a pretty safe approach. I grab cartography and I actually research it right away. I could have taken alchemy, but I couldn't upgrade it, so I decided to go for cartography first. It gives me a strength that makes me feel a bit more secure, since I can now actually copy that fighting band everyone's using, literally everybody, and go up to 5 strength, like literally everybody is. Thanks to cartography, I'm not last all the time, only on Sheeter's turn. And I've noticed these opponents like to put colonies in the deck, so hey, maybe I, get some free colonies. Now, besides that, I take alchemy, and I raise my population, I pass the turn. Okay, so we're all at 5. If Sheeter plays an event, I'm in last, and I get screwed, so I hold my breath. Luckily, he has no events or none that he wants to play. He grabs Monarchy and plays it. Perfectly reasonable. Now his civil actions are solved for the game. And he also has used up his, science nest egg from Stonehenge. What to do here? I think you have to consider taking printing press and drama. They're still here. I think it's still a strong play. I think also it would make sense to build the Taj Mahal, right? Because, you want to build that and get that 3 culture going. Also, it would make sense to research irrigation and upgrade 2 farms. Sheeter decides to play for points rather than for economy. He can do the irrigation next turn. It's not urgent or anything. So you could say, well, it's better to get your farms online than it is to get your points online. Better to get 2 extra food than 3 extra points. I think that's fair. But I also think, this is the bigger, this is a big culture play. You're so far ahead on culture. It's just disgusting. I'm just keeping up because of my hidden culture from Eleanor, but you're just completely going ahead on Columbus and Leonardo, who don't make culture. I think it makes sense to push it and say, hey, let's just go nuts with this thing and start to get the game out of control. All right, it's Sakich's turn. Remember, he took knights for 2 actions. Here they are for 1, the pair of them. He researches alchemy. He upgrades a lab. He built another warrior. I don't like this. I don't know what he's really getting for this strength. I mean, yes, he's now at 8 instead of at 5. So he's always in the lead for events. If there's something really devastating in here, I guess that could make sense. But I'm not a fan of building this many warriors. I would have preferred to upgrade my other lab for those 2 rocks and get my science fixed for good. He also takes iron for 3. I don't think that's correct to take iron for 3 because age 1's almost over. This is a lot of actions. Takes a lot of actions, even under the best of circumstances, even from the first row. Take it, play it, Upgrade all 3. It's 5 actions. It's an entire turn's worth of time just to get your rock production up by 3. I don't think it's worth spending 3 actions now and delaying the value gain even further. Now, okay, Boris, you hotshot, what are you doing for 3 actions? I think there's a reasonable move here. You raise population and take printing press and drama, get ready to go for Shakespeare. Now, I could have done that on my turn, and I didn't, and I think that was a mistake as well. I think me not doing it gave my opponents a gift, but none of my opponents took the gift, so maybe I'm wrong and it's not a good thing to do, but in any case, the printing press falls off, and we go to Gang 1. He plays an event, we all get some free culture, Sheeter getting the most, which is hard to take because he's already the cultural leader by a significant margin. So, Gang 1 researches Swordsman. He builds a Swordsman. I'm not a fan of this. I would have rather just upgraded the existing ones instead of spending a worker to make a new one. But okay, he wants to get the extra strength. That's fine. He then researches iron, upgrades a mine, and upgrades another mine. So a very Borisian style turn here. He's getting his rocks fixed. His science is fixed. He's going to need to look out for food. So he's going to need one of these 3 selective breedings. But in the 4-player game, there are 3 selective breedings. So passing on irrigation is not horrible, especially because selective breeding works into the long game, whereas irrigation grinds to a halt and kind of dies. The one thing I would say to consider in Gang 1's turn, I'm not saying it was correct to do, but he did have Monarchy here for 5 science to help with his civil actions and his military actions. And I think if you end up watching the game, he ends up going for an H2 government, which makes sense. But, you know, there's the old saying, a good option now is better than the best option later. And Monarchy for 5 here, I think, would have been solid, even with the extra civil action that it costs to take it. Okay, so I play an event. We get some free food. What do I do on my turn here? Well, I take knights. I know that I have talked shit about knights, but here, where there's not much else to do, yeah, it kind of makes sense to take it and give yourself access to these tactics. Also, normally I would, research alchemy and upgrade a lab, but I actually researched the knights right away, and I make a knight, so now I don't have the rocks to upgrade alchemy. But I decided to do this because I have this phalanx. I can become the strength leader tied with Sakic, and this also shuts off 3 culture from Sheeter. Now, you have to be careful playing like this, because if you do something to hurt one player in a 4-player game, as we all know by basic game theory, that means that you get hurt, that player gets hurt, and then the 2 other players who are not involved, they profit the most. So Sakic and Gangwon also profit from Sheeter not having his Genghis Khan 3 culture, but they didn't have to spend any resources to make it happen. So it's a bit of a gamble, but I'm hoping that with how crazy Sakic and Gangwon are going for their strength on their turns, instead of doing other productive things, that maybe there's just like some good stuff in here. I don't actually see it. So I'm hoping there's some good stuff in here that I can profit from and steal it from them. So that was my decision. Now, what else to do with my 3 actions? It's a bit rough. Honestly, Swordsman here is a pretty strong grab because it stops the other characters from, or the characters. These guys are characters, am I right? It stops other people from taking it. And it gives me access to H2 tactics, notably the classic army, which is 2 swords and 2 knights for 8 strength. But I don't do that here. I raise population again, and kind of meekly play alchemy for all my science to commit. Now I don't have the option to do anything else with my science next time, but I'm committed to upgrading labs next turn. All right, we're over to Sheeter. He plays an event. And now I am getting a benefit from that knight. I'm getting my 3 rocks back, which is actually incredible because now I can actually upgrade both labs, thanks to being just a little bit above Gang 1. So Sheeter plays this warfare that I think was a mistake to take, but he drops it down. He plays heavy cavalry to get back in the running on strength. I'm not a fan of the warfare here. Yes, this does tie him, which is good for 3 points this turn. But I would have preferred, if it were me, to research irrigation and upgrade it and fix my food. And with all these actions, I could have also taken Swordsman here and then used the Swordsman to buff my strength by 3, rather than Warfare, which only buffs it by 1. And this costs 5 science, whereas these only cost 4. And these also turn on H2 tactics. I mean, there's just like a bunch of things that I think make sense here. But he doesn't decide to go that route. He raises population, builds a 3rd lab, which is fine, I guess, because he does have the extra happy face from Stonehenge. So yes, okay, fix your science, that's fine. He takes knights, reserves, and theology. Now, yeah, he'll need happy faces eventually, but reserves isn't even a good card, and theology is not needed right now. I think not taking swordsman was crazy here. I think swordsman for 2 is more valuable here than knights for one, especially because you're Genghis. Like, the whole thing about Genghis is that because your infantry count as cavalry for tactics until Genghis goes away, swordsman lets you do everything from age 1 and age 2 that it doesn't involve cannons, which is a lot of tactics. And then, because you're Genghis, you can wait for cavalrymen, which cost only a single science more than knights, but turn on all the tactics for the entire game that involve horses. So taking knights here is weird. Either you're just filling up a slot in your hand and never researching it, or you could have just paid one more science and gotten cavalry later. Like I said, a good option now is better than the best option later, but that's one of the things that's just so good about Genghis is, like, you can totally have your cake and eat it too. You can wait for the best option later, and it is actually just better than the good option now, because you don't need this now. As long as you have swordsmen, you don't need these knights. I do think that was a mistaken turn here, but he passes. We're over to Sakich. He plays an event while he's the strength leader, and it's Reign of Terror. Gangwon, if he had one more strength, the weakest player would have been Sheeter, but as it is, Gangwon has to lose a population, which hurts. Sakich raises population, fine. Raises population again, yep, I'm all about paying down your action debt, okay. He builds another warrior. This is where the turn starts to go astray. I don't think you need this warrior. You don't need to have 5 friggin' warriors here. This is sort of crazy. If you want to raise your strength, take swordsman and upgrade your existing warriors, save your workers for other stuff. Now, he's got iron to upgrade and labs to upgrade. What does he do? He puts the Himeji Castle Wonder under construction. This, to me, is bonker sauce. He's nowhere near ready to finish this wonder. Now, if he put new deposits in here, all right, if he put that event in there so he knows he's getting 3 extra rocks, then he knows he can finish this wonder. But I still think it's a mistake even then, because the 4 actions it takes to take this wonder under construction and build it, he had stuff to do. He's got 4 actions that need to happen for iron to research and upgrade 3 times. He's got a 5th for the alchemy that needs to be upgraded. And on top of that, he's got swords to take. But he actually does not take the swordsman. He just builds the first stage of the wonder, which I don't think makes much sense. I think it makes more sense. Well, it's tough to say. I mean, if you upgrade your lab here, then you're like delaying when you can finish this wonder. If you're taking this wonder, you have to commit to trying to build it. But this thing costs 9 rocks and you're making only 3 per turn. You get an extra 3 from new deposits, but it's still a struggle to build this. And you're delaying getting your rocks going and you're delaying getting your science going. Yes, it is culture. Yes, this is strength. But you can get strength from the swordsman. And culture, I admit that that's a thing, but at least your opponents have helped you maybe shut off Genghis's 3, so it's 5-2. If you get your economy going, Sheeter has no economy. Maybe you can catch up to him later. I do think the wonder was the wrong way to go about it, and not taking swordsman was absolutely bonkers here. So Gangwon's shaking his head like, oh, who are these fools not taking swordsman? We get to the industrial age. He's already, he's happy to snap. He's already taken swordsman, so he cannot take these. So he's gonna watch me snap them up for an action, which there's no world where swordsman should have gotten here at all for an action. But anyway, he builds a swordsman, because people like building swordsmen in this game for some reason. He plays reserves for 2 food, raises population, and for his last 2 rocks, he researches theology to get a rock, and to be ready to go to fix happy faces when those are about to become an issue. I think this is a pretty solid turn. Again, I personally would have taken and researched monarchy here. For 5 science, that is a steal, and you can start using that civil action right away. Yes, constitutional monarchy is 2 extra actions and 2 extra military actions, but you're getting some of those extra actions back from having the monarchy online earlier. And I would have personally done that here. I think it was a mistake not to. He builds another swordsman, because why not? And then he passes the turn. On my turn, I do something a little bit gutsy. So it was kind of hard to see it because of this interface, but I had a choice of 2 events to play. It was either Wealthy Territory or Dark Ages. Where are you, Dark Ages? Dark Ages. This is a brutal event, and it's very risky to play, especially since I have alchemies here, so I'm going to be losing some science when it pops. Why not play Wealthy Territory when I have cartography? Well, I don't actually remember this. I don't remember what the hell I was thinking or why I did that. I don't know if it was a misclick or I just forgot I had cartography or what, but it is a little tricky to win colonies here, even with my cartography, because Sakich is, hoarding all this stuff. He can just throw away 2 warriors and not care at this point. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4 strength, because this is a Sun Tzu fighting band. So it's just a little bit tough to win the colony. Maybe I was worried that I wouldn't get it. So maybe I was thinking, well, Gangwon and Sakich are hoarding science here. Maybe I could try to steal the science from them. I'm not sure. I'm kind of surprised, considering how devastating Dark Ages is, that I would put that in here instead of a reasonable alternative and not remember why I did it. But okay, I put the Dark Ages in there. It's done now. I upgrade a lab, finally. Upgrade the other lab, finally. I get another knight because I don't want to fall too far behind, and I still want to keep Sheeter shut off from the Genghis 3 culture. And I grab iron. This could very reasonably be a mistake to start iron this late. The thing is, I'm short on science to make monarchy. It's going to be another 2 turns. Unlike Gangwon, who could do it right now, I can't even do it next turn. So what is there to do with my actions? Well, obviously, I'm going to take Swordsman because I'm not an insane person. But what would I have done with 2 actions if not take iron? Well, I could have taken like drama and masonry. That's putting a lot of science load when we're about to start having all these juicy age 2 technologies. Maybe it was one of those things where I just didn't see what else to do. But honestly, you could very reasonably consider just taking a breakthrough here. 2 actions for 2 science is not amazing by any means. But just letting it go with your mines and either building a 4th mine later or trying to make a switch to coal. Anyway, I pass the turn. And it's up to Sheeter. So Sheeter finally gets irrigation down, and he upgrades both farms. Great, that's what you should do here. What to do with your last few actions? It's kind of a lot of junk sitting around here. He decides to play reserves for 2 food, raise population, and then take masonry. Now that's all fine, except I'm not a fan of the masonry. His science is low. Masonry's a good tech. It's a good little workhorse tech to trade science for rocks. And yes, Sheeter has no rock economy, so I get why he'd want to, reduce the rock count of his buildings, but he doesn't have science either. I don't think masonry is great when your science is low. I would have preferred breakthrough to accommodate the fact that your science sucks, or drama to maybe still actually try to go for Shakespeare or for Gaudi. Also, it's worth noting that in H3 we do have both Marleyan and Chaplin to go with your cheap dramas. All right, he passes the turn. Genghis is not getting 3 culture, although even without the Genghis culture, he's still doing fine. I mean, look at this. Sheeter's just obliterating us here on the culture. If we don't get together and take advantage of his poor science and rocks soon, we're going to be in trouble. But our rocks and science aren't much better collectively as a group. Our science isn't much better than Sheeter's, and our rocks aren't much better than his either. So it's a little bit of a desperate situation here. The steam train has left the station, and he's about to barrel off a cliff if we don't watch it. All right, it's Sakich's turn. He plays an event. It's call to arms, so Sheeter loses 2 civil actions, and Sakich loses 1. He finishes the Himeji Castle, which he must be sad about, because if he had had that built right now, or if that event had been later, I would have been the one to lose an action instead of him. So that was lucky for me and unlucky for him. So he built this, in my opinion, ill-advised castle. Now what to do with 3 actions? Well, there's rich land here to go with his iron. That makes sense. He also grabs cannon. I respect it. You could take breakthrough, I guess, if you want, but I'm a big fan of these age 2 techs, and he puts these cannons to use. So good job, Sakich, paying up the actions to grab cannon here. All right, it's Gangwon, and I think Gangwon just has a thing for Alfred Nobel. He seems to really like this leader, and yeah, 2 strength and 2 science is great. Don't get me wrong. But I do want to point out he doesn't get culture. Just be careful taking leaders that don't help you with culture in H2, like this one, like Napoleon, because sometimes you can fall behind and not be unable to catch up if the opponent gets an effective H2 culture generator and you don't. He also grabs selective breeding, which of course he has to. I would have definitely taken selective breeding here, but I don't think I would have taken Nobel, not for 2 actions. I would have either researched selective breeding and upgraded a farm, or just upgraded a miner and upgraded a lab and waited for selective breeding on the next turn. Notice how much easier his life would be if he had an extra civil action here. There's plenty of stuff he needs for his civil actions. He upgrades a swordsman, which is fine, and then we go over to me. So on my turn, I play an event. It's developed territory. I do manage to win this one for a very needed yellow worker and some science, both of which are very well needed. I just throw away my knight and a defense card, so that's great. What to do on the turn? Well, I take the rifleman. Now, this is a bit of a frisky move. Yeah, I already have swordsman. So why rifleman? Well, I'm trying to strangulate my opponents a bit here. Sheeter would have loved the rifleman. Sakich would have loved the rifleman. Without rifleman, these guys are locked out of a lot of tactics because they both fail to take swordsman. Now, if you look at the deck, there's only one other rifle. So at least one of these opponents is now going to be missing riflemen because I did that, and they're going to be locked out of all the tactics that use infantry for the whole game. And that's most of them. If you look at H2, infantry, 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 infantry. Just a few that don't use infantry, and they're each only a single copy in the deck. So a total of 4 of the 7 use infantry, and this one's kind of garbage. So really only like 2 tactics that are any good. And in H3, it's even more bleak. Infantry, 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 infantry. There's a total of 2 cards that don't use infantry. And, you know, they would need to get cavalrymen and cannon, or the Age 3 versions of those technologies, in order to be able to put those to use. So I'm not saying this is a great play, but if this is the kind of play you wouldn't consider, these are some reasons why you might consider it. What else to do? Well, I got to get iron going. So I take efficient upgrade, I raise population, and I don't research iron. I don't know. That may have been a mistake. I probably should have just researched it and done it. But what I decided to do here, because I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable with the strength, is actually upgrade to a rifle so that I am still above Sheeter, so I'm not last, and so that I'm like, you know, with the rifleman already researched, ready to upgrade my strength further. Is that correct to delay iron even more when we're already in H2? Maybe not. So it's a questionable play. But I throw away some garbage cards, get some culture with Eleanor. She's just keeping me in the game here. I mean, it is just sick how Sheeter shot off with the culture. And if it wasn't for Eleanor, I would be completely in the dust. All right, Sheeter plays an event. It's an inhabited territory. I can't bid on this one. I'm too vulnerable with 2 other people still to go after Sheeter. So Sakic gets this one. It's a bargain. Just throws away a couple of his extra workers that he just always has like 13 extra of sitting around. So what does Sheeter do on his turn? Well, he researches theology to fix his happy faces. He gets that up right away before masonry, so he is paying an extra rock for it. He grabs engineering genius. I don't like this because what is this for? I'm not a fan of taking speculative engineering geniuses, but it is a little bit tricky to find, you know, a concrete plan for him since he doesn't have much to do. If he had like swordsman or something, he could have, you know, spent some rocks to upgrade these warriors. I guess he would have not had to, he would not have been able to research theology in that case. But he could have maybe had some more things to do. And for his last action, he grabs scientific method. Now that's fine. So with this, he can fix his science. I would have preferred, instead of engineering genius, though, to take an H2 urban growth and save 3 rocks. I mean, this is 3 rocks. This is 3 rocks. Except this is 3 rocks you're going to be using very soon. And this is 3 rocks. Who knows if you'll even use it at all. So I do think that the engineering genius versus urban growth is a straight up mistake. But his turn ends. He builds another warrior because it's the hot thing to do in this group, apparently. And we pass the turn. So Sakic now doesn't play an event. He does have 14 science, so he takes Kanma and researches it. It's one of the best feelings in the game. One of the best feelings in Through the Ages is taking Kanma and researching it when you're a despot. Okay, his civil actions are fixed. Now what? Well, James, Watt, and Cole are sitting here, and he's on bronze, so that's just a gift from the heavens. Of course, you got to build you got to build a warrior first, though. You got to build a warrior. You can't just take a turn and not build an extra warrior that does absolutely nothing. So I mean, you got to just do that. But then after that, he takes James, Watt, and Cole, and he can't get this down yet. So he's got to find something else to do with 2 actions. Well, he grabs an urban growth. And then he passes the turn. Now, he actually chooses not to spend 3 rocks upgrading a lab, and I think that that's crazy, but I actually don't think it's wrong, because now, with 5 science and James Watt giving a 2 science reduction, he actually can research coal next turn and use rich land and these rocks to upgrade 2 coal mines. And I actually think it's smart. That was a really savvy play to delay the science and even not use a civil action in exchange for being able to get your coal going online sooner. Now, in addition to this, you might be wondering, why not take urban growth? Well, his hand's full. He's at his hand limit. So that's why he cannot take the urban growth. And I think it was smart of him not to use those rocks. So Gang 1 begins construction of Harvard College. It seems like he really loves Harvard College, and it seems like he loves Alfred Nobel. I've seen Gang 1 do this in multiple games. One or the other, or both. Notice it would be much easier to do all this stuff if he had Monarchy online, but he doesn't, so he's still stuck at 4 actions. And I don't think that 5 actions to take and play Harvard College are worth it. Okay, is there any way that I can see what this wonder does? No, there isn't. I'm going to have to click ahead here. Okay, there we go. So this wonder, it's 3 science. That's great. You've already got a ton of science. A culture is nothing. And this is a cool ability, but it's not game breaking or anything. This was not worth a turn and an extra worth of civil actions because he's got stuff to do. He's got selective breeding to research and upgrade. That's 3 actions. And he could have also upgraded his lab. He had enough rocks to do that. I think that should have been his turn. No question. But he decides to upgrade a mine. He builds the first stage of Harvard. At least that's consistent. If you're going to put the Wonder under construction, you got to get it going. And then he passes the turn. Now it's my turn, and I play an event. And it is Dark Ages. This is a devastating Dark Ages. I mean, this event is a soul destroyer in a lot of games. This probably isn't like the most devastating Dark Ages of all time, but this one hits like a truck. So Gang 1 loses 10 science, but also put a bookmark on Sakich here. This 1 science that he loses is devastating. This 1 science that Sakich loses is like worse than the 10 science that Gang 1 loses. I'm not like, maybe not objectively, but it certainly feels that way. So we'll see that when we get to Sakich's turn. Anyway, I lose 2 science. It doesn't bother me that much. I'm still able to research iron. Thank God. And if I had been 1 science less, I don't know, I would have like cried myself to sleep for hours. I upgrade a mine. I play efficient upgrade the other mine. And what do? Next. Well, I think here taking a leader would have been smart because these are both good. This is 2 culture per turn. This would help me get a government online with my crappy science more easily. They're both very solid. Taking revolutionary idea or breakthrough just to get some science makes sense. So I think I had a lot of decent options here. I chose probably the worst, which is taking reserves and frugality. Like, yes, it's cool to get food and rocks, but I had more important things. Science was more important and getting a leader was more important. As it is, I just kind of take those cards and pass the turn. I do get the classic army from before, so now I will be able to have this, and I don't need to worry about taking cannon, because that's a good enough tactic to go to the end of the game with. Okay, Sheeter plays an event. It's Wealthy Territory, which I later put in. I try to win it, but Sheeter ties me, throws away a couple of a warrior and a bunch of defense cards, and gets 6 rocks, which is incredible for him. He raises population, and now, take a moment, tell me what you think Sheeter can, well, don't tell me, I guess, because you're just talking to your computer, but think to yourself, what should Sheeter do in this spot? He's just raised his population, he's got 5 actions left, and now what? I think what you do here is you take the Eiffel Tower and you build it. I mean, I think that's just what you do. So you spend 3 actions to put it under construction, and if you don't raise your population, you have 3 actions to build it. And I think that's the way to go. You could even do a frisky move. You could do like Eiffel Tower Masonry, Engineering Genius, and then use Masonry to finish it. I don't think that's correct because I think you want to get your scientific method down first. But I think not taking Eiffel Tower was a mistake here. Yes, you don't have any economy, but you've got the opportunity to get it down right now. It fixes your next happy face, which is looming. H2 is almost ending. It's an extra 4 culture. Put the game away. Put the game away. Get the Eiffel Tower built. But he doesn't go for the big play. He raises population by 4. He researches Masonry, which I still think is a mistake. I think you wait until you can get scientific method and then get Masonry. But okay, what he decides to do here is he grabs Revolutionary Idea so he can then get scientific method next turn. And then he builds a mine. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not really sure what that accomplishes besides temporarily delaying corruption. He also grabs an Engineering Genius, which not with this one, and then the Eiffel Tower not being built just doesn't make any sense to me. And he grabs Navigation, which, I mean, there's not much else to do at this point. But I think this was a bit of a mismanaged turn. I think Eiffel Tower should have been built, and if not that, I don't think we need to be making Masonry. I think we should be taking some science from the second row. But all right, he passes the turn. He's got a giant horde of rocks. He's ready to upgrade labs. Life's okay for Sheeter. Sakich plays an event. It's rats. I lose a bunch of food. Sheeter loses some food. It sucks. But look at Sheeter, okay? He has 4 science. If it wasn't for Dark Ages, he would have had 5. He could have played James Watt with 5 science, research coal, and upgraded twice. But instead, he's got a zillion civil actions, and he cannot get anything out of his hand. You don't want to, play James Watt until Columbus has played the colony and buggered off. You can't do coal, cannon, richland, iron, or knight. He can't do anything. His hand is just like clogged, and he's in horrible situation. So he makes the most of it. He does play the urban growth to upgrade a lab. He puts the Eiffel Tower under construction because what else is there to do with your actions? He builds a warrior because, well, you got to build a warrior, right? That's not negotiable. Every turn, no matter what's happening, you build a warrior. And then he grabs selective breeding, which honestly is fine. Now, later on, we're going to see that this Eiffel Tower causes Sakich some grief. But the thing is, as much as I love to criticize that, like, I can't even hold it against him because with the selective breeding, his hand is full. He cannot take cards. He can't research anything. I mean, he could have just played James Watt, gotten rid of Columbus, said screw it, and then he could have like taken another card. But then he still would have had like 2 actions left over if he wasn't taking the Eiffel Tower. So his turn is over. He was dicked. He was knocked to the ground by a horse and kicked in the head by that Dark Ages. So kudos to me for putting the Dark Ages in there over Wealthy Territory, because that may have given me the edge that I needed to stay ahead of Sackage this game. Gang 1 grabs Constitutional Monarchy for 3 actions, because he needs to desperately fix his actions. He was still a despot with no bonuses. He researches it, so now his actions are finally fixed. It's time to throw out Leonardo, put down Alfred Nobel. He grabs Breakthrough for some more science, because now he actually has used up all of his science and lost 10 of it to Dark Ages, so it makes sense to get some more. Perfectly valid. But then he also makes another Breakthrough, and honestly, instead of taking these 2 breakthroughs, I would have just finished building Harvard College. So, I miscommentated. I think taking the Breakthrough made sense in the abstract, but in this specific situation, instead of spending 2 actions to take 2 breakthroughs, which are worth 6 science, I think you finish building Harvard College, which is worth 3 science every turn. So he really only gains 3 science from these 2 breakthroughs. It's like 1.5 science per action. I don't actually think that was a good idea. He should have finished his wonder here and then gotten ready to do selective breeding next turn. But okay, he passes the turn. He's the strength leader at least. And now it's my turn. I play another event because I gotta with Eleanor. We get knowledge, so we get some science back that we lost from Dark Ages. It comes out in a wash. I decide to put the Statue of Liberty under construction. I need workers. It's a risky call because I don't have a government, so the Statue of Liberty is not actually generating... Oh my god, this app. Okay. It's not actually generating any culture for me since I don't have a government. But I really want those workers, and I decided to take a very principled line here. Since I got all the basics from Age 1, the big 3, now I'm going to take reserves, and I can finish the Statue of Liberty next turn, as well as playing a reserves this turn, and then getting ready to build a knight and dropping down this classic army. Now, you might say, Boris, why didn't you do that right now? Well, I didn't want to do it until I was ready to get the fully upgraded version of it. Right now, with this warrior not yet being a rifle, I can't. And if I upgrade, that delays me building the Statue of Liberty. So Sheeter plays an event. It's a historic territory. Sackage is the only one who bids on it, so he gets a free happy face for one of his 27,000 warriors. Very good trade. And what does Sheeter do? Well, we get navigation down. So I feel like that's kind of a weird play. Why not, for 6 science, research scientific method and use your pile of rocks to upgrade? Well, actually, Sheeter has a reason for that. What he does is he puts the Transcontinental Railroad under construction and grabs coal. So his plan is to build this wonder, get 5 strength, and have a coal mine double producing. That's the plan. It's a bold plan. I think building the Eiffel Tower last turn was also a bold plan and was a better plan than this one. But it is not a terrible plan because it is going to give him 5 strength. And he can build this thing pretty soon. In fact, he uses masonry to spend 6 rocks in 1 action right now to build the first 2 stages of this wonder. He is still corrupt, but even with the corruption, he'll still be able to finish it thanks to Engineering Genius and Engineering Genius 2. Tweedledum and Tweedledee over here, finally getting some use. All right, so he passes the turn. He didn't take cannon. Now, that's the turn he made, he had to leave cannon there. I do think that's crazy, and he should have absolutely taken cannon. He has just no technologies that activate Age 2 tactics. I think cannon was just nuts to pass on. But Sackage is like, holy crap, cannon here, I've already taken cannon, this sucks. Now Gang 1 is going to get a cannon for a single action, which is just ludicrous. All right, now Sackage, it must be noted, did finally get Christopher Columbus used. It was a colony from Age 1, so he could have done it the previous turn and gotten James Watt down. And actually, I think he probably should have done that. I guess he wanted to draw 1 extra time to see if he can get an H2 colony. But I think actually it would have been correct for him to just do this last turn when he had a bunch of civil actions to burn because of that Dark Ages catastrophe. And, you know, be able to take an extra card and not saddle himself with the Eiffel Tower. I actually just realized that. I didn't realize that when I was preparing. So, yeah, I think he actually made a mistake last turn more so than I realized, which perhaps makes this Eiffel Tower a worse move than I gave it credit for as well. Okay, he's got 6 more actions to spend here. What does he do? Well, let's get coal down. Let's upgrade a mine. Let's upgrade another mine. Let's build a warrior because we got to build a warrior. Well, right. Oh, Jesus Christ. I almost forgot to build a warrior. Thank God. My 5th warrior, who's not even contributing to a tactic. Gotta build one of those. I don't know why. I will never understand till the day I die. He grabs efficient upgrade, which makes sense. Helps with selective breeding and with the coal. He takes opera for culture generation. Now, that move is a little bit strange. It's going to take a while to build the Eiffel Tower, but you're not going to build it and an opera for 8 rocks. I think if you have the Eiffel Tower, you should build the Eiffel Tower, because otherwise you're blocking yourself from ever getting age 3 wonders if you're just going to let this ride till age 4 and then disappear. Now, you might say, well, no, he realized 13 rocks was worse than 8. Let's get the opera going instead. But this costs science, and he's not making that much science. I think, the best situation, I think that like if he had gone for the Eiffel Tower, that would not have been a sunk cost fallacy. Like, I think it would have still been okay to do that. And I think it would have been better than trying to go for opera. And there were things, he could take patriotism here. He could take wave of nationalism here. He could even research selective breeding or raise a population. There were things for him to do. He did not have to spend these 2 actions to grab the opera. Was it 2 actions for opera or is it 1? It was 2. Yeah, for 2, I think that was a mistake. I think it would have been better just to focus on building the wonder. All right, so Gang 1 goes, Iconoclasm is brutal. This hurts. Because I was 1 turn away from frickin' putting down Eleanor. Granted, I would have played an event on my turn, so I still would have triggered it. But if I had been able to play a leader on top of Eleanor, remember, Eleanor's ability is that when she is replaced, you get back 3 civil actions instead of 1. So this cost me 2 civil actions to lose her early. It's just brutal. It's kind of like you replace her with a leader and you get back 3. Or you play that leader and you don't get back any. So it really costs me 3 civil actions. It costs 1 normally anytime you lose the option to replace a leader. But then it also costs me an additional 2 from her ability specifically. So that hurts. Don't know who put that in there, but I hate him. Anyway, Gang 1 finishes Harvard, which is consistent. He now plays selective breeding, upgrades both farms. Great. I love it. And then he takes cannon, obviously, because you don't do that, because you don't pass on that unless you're a crazy person, and he passes the turn. Well, I offer international trade agreement to Gang 1 because he is right now kind of losing. If you look at the situation, he's generating the least culture and has the least culture. That's the price you pay for going for Alfred Nobel. So I figure, okay, he can make a rock. I'll make an extra food. It'll keep my irrigation going a little bit longer. And he accepts, which I think you should generally do unless there's some really crazy reason not to. Well, this is my last chance for a leader. I don't want Isaac Newton or Shakespeare. Isaac Newton makes no culture, and Shakespeare, I did not take the stuff that I would have needed to make him work. So it's great that Catherine's here. I'm lucky that she was here in the one action row. That's just incredible. So I take her, I play her, I generate 2 culture, get an extra military action. And then, in addition, I need to now try to actually get ahead of everybody on strength so I can actually use her ability to, steal somebody's yellow token. So, what to do? Well, we are going to first build Statue of Liberty, because I do think it's important to build it if you have the opportunity. And I'm also taking the Republic here. So I'm sadly 1 science away, if it was that Dark Ages, 1 science away from researching it this turn, which sucks, but next turn I can research it and use the reserves to get my classic army online, and then try to, go for Catherine's spoilage of other people's workers. All right, Sheeter has lost Genghis, and then he loses Worker, as well as Gang 1 gains 1. So that hurts for him. But he does finish the Transcontinental Railroad. Had he finished that, had that come up on either Sakich or Gang 1's turn, I would have actually been... No, never mind. Had it come up on his turn, but he already had it built, which is granted kind of difficult, I would have been last. It would have been difficult for it to come otherwise, though. He finishes the railroad. He plays Revolutionary Idea. And now I want you to pause, okay? It's your turn. All right, you have 3 actions left. You just finished this wonder here, the railroad. You played Revolutionary Idea. What are you going to do? If I'm a Las Vegas bookie, what I'm going to say that you're going to do here is you're going to research coal and upgrade coal to increase your production by 4 rocks. 2 normally, and then 4 because it's doubled. And for your last action, I don't care what you do. I don't care if you, spit on a butterfly. You can do whatever you want, but you're going to research coal and upgrade coal. Sheeter takes Team Sports. Team Sports. For 2 actions Does he need happy face? No, he does not. He already has a happy face fixing technology, which will give him more than enough happy faces even after the age ticks over. He does not need team sports. He doesn't have the science for team sports. He certainly does not need it for 2 civil actions and passing on getting coal researched and upgraded right now with Transcontinental Railroad. I am aghast. If you put me in that situation and said, okay, you have 3 actions left, now please, I'm going to put a gun to your head, spend 2 actions to take team sports. With a gun to my head, I would have been like, well, tell my boys daddy loved them very much. I mean, like, there's just no way you take team sports here. I wish I could talk to this man and find out what that thought process was, because I don't understand it. For his last action, he grabs Wave of Nationalism. Fine. Okay, he is sort of last-ish. But this is 6 rocks, best case. And you know what else gives you 6 rocks? A turn and a half of coal with the Transcontinental Railroad. So I'm boggled. This was just a nightmare of a turn to watch. But anyway, he goes back to Sun Tzu's fighting band, so he's not in dead last. He's actually in second for the moment. And then we go over to Sakich's turn. So Sakich plays an event. We got freedom of movement. He does a cool move here. He turns this temple into a lab, which is pretty cool because he doesn't need the happy faces. So that was actually a really good event for him. And he raises population. What to do with this monstrous bevy of actions? Well, I think you got to fix your food here because you need to get food production going. And consider grabbing strategy while you wait for the rocks to build the Eiffel Tower with. However, Sakich had a different line. He upgraded a mine. He researched selective breeding. He did upgrade both farms. He had enough rocks to do that. Thanks to James Watt being kind of a powerhouse. Okay, that's great. I love that interface. Yeah, this is good. Can we go ahead? But then he takes architecture. I don't agree with this. This is more than a turn's worth of science production. You've got a lot of rocks. You don't need the rock boost. You need the rocks less than you need the science. I think that this should have stayed where it was, and he should have taken strategy if he was going to do anything that involved, researching stuff. But okay, he takes the architecture, and then with his last action, he grabs journalism. It's a little bit ambitious. When are you going to get opera and journalism and the Eiffel Tower? Answer is never. That's never going to happen. But again, it's kind of a little bit unlucky. He had no yellow cards to take. I would have just taken strategy and tried to get a revolutionary idea later to power it out. This doesn't require any workers or rocks to make. It's just there, and it gives you more military actions and, of course, more strength. Okay, so Sakich passes the turn here. We're over to Gangwon. Gangwon plays an event. It's developed territory. And I can't quite bid enough to take it, so Sheeter wins it. Sheeter does just have to use up a single worker, so that's a pretty nice haul for him. And what to do on Gangwon's turn? Well, he grabs the opera, and for Gangwon, this actually makes a lot of sense because he has tons of science. He doesn't have an Eiffel Tower under construction, and what he needs is culture. So it's smart to take it and start to generate some culture with it. In addition, he researches it right now, builds the opera, all good stuff. He grabs architecture. I don't agree with this line. Architecture is a great technology, don't get me wrong, but he is making 7 rocks thanks to my little pact that I offered him. He needs strength. He needs more military actions if he wants to get ahead on wars. He, could take cavalrymen, but architecture seems like the lowest priority on the totem pole. Well, he does grab the strategy, and he passes the turn. All right, for my turn, I'm currently in last. I decided not to play any events, though I could have, because I didn't want to risk, while I still was at 11 strength, getting hit by something. Maybe I should have just risked it, because I wasn't last. I was actually second on tie breaks. I probably should have just played one of these events. But in any case, I build the knights. I finally slap down the classic army. So if 2 people are still going to be weaker than me when my next turn comes around, I can use my political action to gain a yellow token and make those people lose a yellow token. Now, what to do? Well, for once, I'm actually not taking cannon here because I'm going to ride classical army all the way to the end, and my civil actions are not great. Well, okay, they're about to become better, but my military actions are not great, and I don't think I can commit to making any cannons. So I obviously research Republic. This gives me a ton of actions and not a whole lot to do with them. What I find is I use frugality to raise population. I raise population again. I grab organized religion because I will need to fix my happiness eventually. I grab I do take cannon? Okay, I take cannon. I forgot I took cannon. I guess I just took it as a hate draft from, let's see. Sheeter doesn't have cannon. Sakich does, but this means Sheeter is now in real trouble because he just has cavalry and can't ever get cannon. I guess on his turn he could get cavalry and rifles. Interesting. But I guess I hate draft the cannon for some reason. I have nothing better to do. And I hate draft the cavalry because I guess there's nothing better to do than that either. And I play reserves. I do think it would have been smarter with just this abundance of civil actions. I have 8 to just have taken frugality for 3 food later on. I think it was probably a mistake to play a reserves when there's a really good chance I'll be able to play it next turn and not actually care about the civil actions. But all right, I passed the turn here. Sheeter is up. And here is where I'm going to take a little bit of a break. We do get the international agreement, which stinks because I'm the strongest player, but I can't do this because I need to use my political action to use Catherine's ability. So the timing for my opponents on this was perfect. All right, I'm going to take a little break here. All right, for his first action of the turn, Sheeter grabs Isaac Newton. And this is sometimes a leader you have to be careful of, especially at the start of age 3 here, because Isaac Newton doesn't make any culture, but Sheeter's still doing okay on the culture front. He is still the culture leader by amount and by generation, though he can't see Sakich at the moment, so I think this is a perfectly reasonable play. He then makes a scientific method, grabs cavalrymen, makes a cavalry, and also upgrades the lab for a huge science boost. Now, the one thing, of course, is he's still not getting coal with the Transcontinental Railroad, which is driving me insane. But, you know, at this point, that's his life. He gets the science fixed with Newton first, and then he's planning to do coal the next round. Maybe. Or is he? We'll find out. So then it's Sakich's turn. Sakich raises population, makes cannons, and he fixes his strength. He's got the the fortifications for 5 strength to go with his 2 cannons. Interestingly, he is still 1 strength behind me. And that means that when I use my political action to make everyone lower than me in strength lose a yellow token from the rank, he's going to lose a yellow token. He couldn't have done much about this, though. I think he did about as much strength as he could have, and now he's out of rocks with 5 actions still to spend. One comment I'll make about Sakich's move is I don't understand why he takes computers, or at least I think it's a mistake. I guess I do understand it. With computers, Sid Meier and Bill Gates both have really strong synergy. But this is speculative. They might be near the back of the deck. You might not get the option to take them. And at 2 actions, there's Air Forces and Riflemen here, both of which are really strong cards. So I don't agree with that play. He does take the Riflemen, but strangely leaves the Air Forces, which is a pivotal card in a lot of cases, and he grabs Organized Religion. This I also am not sure about. Okay, he's going to lose a yellow token, but then he still has to raise his population 3 times before that happy face matters. And he's got Opera, or the Eiffel Tower if he ever feels like building it. He doesn't really need this. So I think I would have personally preferred to grab Frugality for 3 extra food. All right, but he passes the turn. It's Gang 1. He's thrilled. Air Forces landed right on his doorstep for a single action. He also takes tanks for 3 actions, so now he's got almost up-to-date military. He's got the ability to make any H2 tactic, and with modern infantry, he'll be able to make any H3 tactic. He goes ahead and decides to grab tanks right away, making him the only person to avoid losing a yellow token to Catherine's ability. And of course he grabs the Air Forces because of course he does. So we pass the turn to me. I use Catherine's ability to get a yellow token, and Sheeter and Sakich each lose 1. And at this point, I'm thinking, I gotta get culture. If we look at the situation, it's all kind of close. Sheeter's in the lead, but it's close for the rest of us. I'm not 100% sure here that I can overpower anybody because I don't really have the workers for it. I only got this one from this 1 yellow token. Okay, from this, and then 1 yellow token from Catherine, so I'm definitely better off than I could be. But irrigation is running out of steam pretty fast here. So I figure let's actually try to at least be okay on the culture front instead of going all in on the war. And we grab this wonder, which is built with food. Now, I don't have very much food, but I got the reserves, which I plan to use for food. And I grabbed the revolutionary idea because my science is low. So my hope is, okay, with 7 food plus 4 is 11, I can make 3 stages, and my opponents can make the other 2 stages. So I get 18 points plus the colonies ahead against one opponent. Remember, this also gives you a point for each colony in play. I'm not going to count them all, but it's, some trifling number of points. And then for each of the 2 opponents who do build a stage alongside me, I get 12 points ahead of them because I made 3 stages for 18 and they each made 1 for 6. Plus, again, the colonies at the end. Now, if you look at my opponent's food, Sheeter actually cannot contribute because he only has 2 food. But Sakich and Gang 1 can each make 1 stage. So that was my plan, is they would each make a stage. And then I would get my biggest culture gain against the person who's currently in the culture lead. All right, what to do with my remaining 2 actions? I decide to fix my happy faces in case somebody put a stupid event in there, the one that makes you lose half of your unhappy workers rounded up. That'll be a significant thing at some point in this game. So, but for now, I try to ward off against that, and then we move on. Back to Sheeter's turn. He plays an event. It's National Pride, so he, the leader, gets even more culture, which is really sad to see. And here, he makes a bit of a weird turn. He blows up a mine and makes cavalry, so he's trying not to fall too far behind on strength. But then he grabs Gates. Now, Bill Gates is a hero that gives you rocks per labs and also a one-time culture bonus for the rocks made by those labs at the end of the game. The thing is, this doesn't make any culture, and I think in Sheeter's case, the perfect leader would have been Gandhi. Gandhi makes culture, and Gandhi also makes it harder for your opponents to attack you. So it makes a lot of sense for Sheeter, the culture leader, to hide behind Gandhi, get his rocks going with the coal that he has the Transcontinental Railroad for, and then just try to finish out the game beating out by just stretching out your culture lead until the game ends. I think he really missed it here by taking the wrong leader, because you're going to see what happens without Gandhi, and you're going to see that these rocks with the coal end up being too many rocks. Well, he does research coal, and then he upgrades labs. He doesn't upgrade the coal. He is just trying to inflict as much psychological damage upon me as possible by researching the coal, but not upgrading it, upgrading a lab instead. Now, granted, Bill Gates is making that lab provide two rocks as opposed to 0, but if he had upgraded the coal, that would have increased his rock production by 4. So it makes absolutely no sense by any stretch. He then grabs rockets, an efficient upgrade, but who's paying attention to what he's doing at this point? We've passed the turn, and it's over to Sakic. Now, Sakic also could consider taking Gandhi, because Sakic is behind on strength. Now, the colony flips up, Gang 1 beats Sheeter on tiebreak to get the military cards and 4 strength. He has to send 2 units to do it, but that's fine, because it's 4 strength. Sakic could consider taking Gandhi as well, because he does need culture, but he's not in as good of a position as Sheeter to do it, because he's behind on culture currently. So he's not keeping the lead. He's taking away the opportunity from himself to beat someone else up. And the 2 culture from Gandhi may be inadequate. So I don't hate the fact that he doesn't take it. It was just worth considering. He researches computers, which is interesting because now the computers, they don't do anything unless Sid Meier comes out, since Gates was already taken. And if Sid Meier's near the end, then, you don't really get any value out of him. Now, of course, you are getting the science from the computers, but I would have preferred here to do journalism and get science from journalism and culture, because Sakic is, he's hanging out here with the other players. With the 2 extra culture from journalism, he's keeping pace. I think I would have preferred that over the all-in on the computer science. But he goes for the computers, he's out of rocks, he's got 4 actions left to spend. What does he do? He makes a bit of a strange play, in my opinion. He grabs Air Forces and Mechanized Agriculture. Now, Air Forces, of course, that makes perfect sense. I'm not sure why the Mechanized Agriculture, though. Yes, it is cheaper with Watt. It's kind of this weird thing where with Watt, these only cost 4 rocks, and then the Selective Breeding also only cost 4 rocks. So it's free to upgrade. But of course, it's not free. You're still paying the actions and the 3 science to research it and then upgrade. And I'm not sure what he's getting from the food. The main thing that you would want to get from the food is the International Red Cross, the one that costs food, but someone else already has that. So I don't entirely understand this line. I think it would have been better to just take Revolutionary Idea and either Gandhi, though again, that's questionable, and then just raise a population to spend an action if you don't have anything else you want to do. So anyway, he passes the turn. It's over to Gang 1. He plays an event, and we flip this. So Sheeter has to give me 3 food, 3 rocks, or 3 science, and since Gang 1 flipped the card, he gets to choose. Now, it's actually a kind of an interesting situation here. He chooses rocks, but which is often what you don't choose. You often do food, because, you're trying to, minimize the value. But in this case, since I'm building the food-based wonder, giving me food isn't good. And giving me science when my science is so low is not good either. So he goes for the rocks instead, which I'm actually happy with as well. I mean, they were all good options for me. He spends 3 actions to grab Civil Service and research it, fixing his actions for good. at least his civil actions. And then with his remaining 4 actions, what to do? Well, he decides to raise population, make another tank, and copy my classic army, grabbing Revolutionary Idea, Pro Sports, and the other Revolutionary Idea along the way. This is just a gangbuster's turn, because Revolutionary Idea is such a strong card. The fact that he got to take 2 of them for a single action each is just wild. But he gets to do those, gets to fix his strength and become the strength leader, so he's suddenly in pretty good shape. He's hanging out on culture. He's got a really strong army capability. His rocks are solid. He's got air forces. He's got the science for air forces. This guy is ready to tumble. So he passes the turn. I'm a little bit worried about him. And that affects my play here. I play an event. We get vast territory. Sakic pays up 2 units and a bunch of cards to win it, which is not insignificant. Losing these defense cards means that now aggressions are more likely to work. But I do grab the air forces, obviously, and I research and play them right away. It's not what I would have wanted to do, but I want to make sure that I'm not getting whooped by Gangwon. Even though it looks like my strength is higher than his, it's actually not really, because he can easily overtake me. But I just want to make sure that I'm not the biggest target for him, and I'm hoping that this will be enough to ward off any aggressions and wars, and just let me focus on culture for the rest of this game and try to win it fair. Or maybe, you know, beat up Sheeter with one of my wars if Sheeter is not paying attention. With the rest of my turn, I do play the reserves for food. I make 3 stages of the Red Cross for 18 points. And now next turn I'll be able to make 1 more stage, I think. Well, Sheeter now has enough food to build a stage of the Wonder. So Sheeter, Sakic, and Gangwon can all do it. But the point is I got my 3 stages. I just wanted to make sure I could make 3 stages. Because if you only make 2, then it's kind of crappy. But 3 is fine. Then I build a lab to beef up my science a little bit, because there are still scientific things I want. Like I still want military theory if I get the chance. Maybe this cannon at some point. Maybe one of the blue technologies. Well, okay, engineering and satellites are about to go, so perhaps not those. But I decided to just, you know, go for the science here, since I can't generate culture with those rocks. Instead of hoarding them, I, you know, beef up my ability to maybe research movies or something down the line. I'm not 100% sure this was the right play, but I do think it was, because with the revolutionary ideas all being snapped up so early in the age, I'm not going to be able to use my civil actions to make up for my science production. So I think it was pretty reasonable to use these rocks to get 2 extra science per turn. All right, the turn ends. Sheeter's up. He plays an event as the weakest player. We get a bunch of free stuff. And then he raises population, makes a 3rd cavalry, and the purpose of this is to get out these shock troops. They are antiquated, so they're only making 6, not 11, but it is something. He's hanging on in there with the strength. He grabs democracy for a speculative play. I mean, yes, 3 culture and 7 actions is nice, but his science is not, like, amazing enough to pull it off. And as the weaker player, he may need science for other more pressing matters. I think I would have been very cautious about making this move, but he goes for it. He finally upgrades to coal with the Transcontinental Railroad, but the thing is, I think he goes overboard now. He does grab the reserves. He then upgrades a lab, so he's making science and a ton of rocks, but it's one of those things where after upgrading another coal mine, he's just making too many rocks, and look, he has no way to turn those rocks into points. And that's the thing. In Age 3, you've got to look for ways to turn rocks into points. Instead of those last 2 upgrades, upgrading a lab, upgrading a mine, I think he should have taken movies, because that would have given him a way to turn rocks into points. And it's not amazing, you know, 4 culture per movie, but he is still the culture leader from his incredible early and mid game. So, you know, just getting an extra 4 culture a turn, or even 8 culture a turn with these crazy rocks, you know, maybe that would have been enough to keep him in the game. So he passes the turn. Sakic is feeling pretty vulnerable here. So he builds a stage of My Wonder. He makes the Air Forces, and he makes an Air Force. So now he's okay. The Air Forces fix his strength for the time being. He's mostly out of rocks and out of science. So what to do with the rest of his actions? Again, he makes what I think are pretty strange moves here. He grabs oil, and then he raises population twice, which leaves military theory sitting here. I find this kind of strange because he has good science. He could research military theory. That would be very helpful for him. And it ends up being very critical that he leaves the military theory for Gangwon, and eventually, perhaps, for another player to be seen. Had he taken this military theory, giving it to himself, and robbing another player of it, there are 2 in the deck in a 4-player game, it would have had a significant impact on this game. But he leaves it there to grab oil, which, again, why oil? Your rocks are already pretty plentiful. Oil, again, is cheap with James Watt. It costs 7 rocks. Coal costs 6, so it's super cheap to upgrade. But again, it's nearing the end of the game. It costs actions to do this. Your rocks are already fine. The important thing for him would have been to turn rocks into points, not to just generate more rocks. So I think he and Sheeter are making similar mistakes on this one, though Sheeter is doing it in a more crazy way, and he passes the turn. Gang 1 plays an event. It's wealthy territory. I do manage to win this one for a song. Thank you. Cartography. I just have to pay a knight a defense card in the cartography, and 9 rocks are mine. And now Gang 1, I think he makes a pretty solid play here. This is a strong player. I did kind of go hard on him in the first game. I think he made some strange moves, but here he makes a big play. He grabs Marlene for 3, and I think it's exactly what he needed to do, because he realizes he's got to go all in on strength in order to make this happen, and he doesn't shy away from it. So he spends 3 actions grabbing Marlene, a 4th action to replace Nobel. Remember, Nobel does not give you a civil action back when you replace him. Instead, he makes this thing happen where you get 4 points if you research 2 technologies in the same turn. This is open to everybody. He grabs architecture, he raises population, and then makes a theater. Then takes fundamentalism in case he needs the strength. Now, he leaves the military theory for me and makes it come down to 1 action, which is incredible. Remember, Sakic could have taken this, then Gang 1 could have taken this, but Gang 1 had bigger fish to fry. So it comes to me for 1 action, which ends up being very significant in this game. In Gang 1's case, I don't think it was a mistake to not take it, because he does have strategy, which is, okay, 2 strength less, 1 military action less, but it's still fine that it wasn't like an emergency to need to take military theory for 2 actions. So I don't think it was a mistake of him to leave it. It just ends up being nice that I get to have it for 1. So he passes the turn, he's making good culture, and he is ready to rock and roll with this leader and a lot of scientific support and air forces to pull off some big wars. On my turn, I finished the Red Cross. I'm actually very happy only Sakic contributed. Gang 1 had bigger fish to fry, so I actually get an extra 6 points and then another 9 points for the colonies, which is nice. Now, on my turn here, I decide I gotta make a big play. I don't think I can overpower people because I don't think I'm going to have enough workers to make, some huge army and win a big war. Another problem is my lack of military actions. So I need to take military theory, which is really good. And of course I do take it, but it's going to be a while before I can get this down and have enough actions to make an army and declare a war. You have to count your military actions very carefully. Say I do want to win with a war. Why not, right? I've got rocks, I can make some workers or blow up some labs for workers. But look, to make a second army, I would need 5 actions for 2 knights, 2 rifles, and an air force, plus another 3 actions to actually declare the war. How many military actions do I have? I just spent 1 to rebuild the knight that I used to win the colony with, so I have 2 here. I cannot make military theory this turn, because I don't have enough science. So next turn I'm going to have 3. That's 5. And then it's not until the following turn I'm actually going to have the actions to declare the war. So yes, that is good, but that's like 3 turns that my opponents have to catch up to me. And while 2 classic armies is pretty strong, it's not necessarily strong enough to beat somebody. We're going to see in some other games in this tournament that, just having a huge pile of armies is not a guarantee that you're going to be able to win the game with a war over culture. Plus, of course, all this activity is not drawing me any cards, and I need cards because I've got a bunch of crap in my hand. So I'm basically forfeiting the opportunity to play events for 3 points each, plus, of course, whatever value I might get from the events and the endgame scoring. So I decided to make a big play. No more playing timid. Let's make a big play here. I grab the computers and Sid Meier, which are here, for 5 actions. It's a lot. But that's one of the nice things about having lots of actions, is that you can make big plays like this. As long as I can avoid being the target of a war, next turn with my cache of rocks, I'll be able to get this down for a bunch of culture. And it's not necessarily going to win me the game, but I'm close to Sheeter now that I've pulled off that International Red Cross. I may be able to overtake him and keep the lead. The main issue, of course, is Gang 1's culture is now actually, his generation's really, really good, thanks to Marlene and those operas. But I am ahead of him on raw culture at the moment, and with computers I can maybe stay ahead. That was my plan. Of course, I have actions left over. Thank you, Pyramids. Thank you, Republic. So I also grab the military theory and raise my population a single time. All right, so I'm cautiously optimistic about this game at this point. We go over to Sheeter, see what zany things he's going to do. He makes a pact with Gang Wan for international tourism, which I am not happy to see. It means that Gang Wan is getting 3 extra culture per turn. Now, why did Sheeter offer this to Gang Wan? Well, Sheeter himself is getting 2 culture, so he is behind compared to Gang Wan. He's given Gang Wan 3 in exchange for 2 for himself, but he is getting 2 ahead of his other players. So he may be like just saying, well, screw it, I'm just going to try to go for second place. In addition, who else would he offer it to? Well, he could have offered it to Sakic, and they each would have made 2. I don't know. Maybe he should have just offered it to Sakic. To me, he could have also offered it. It would have been the exact same deal as to Gang Wan, but I am in the lead compared to Gang Wan. So it makes sense he wouldn't offer it to me, but I think Sakic would have actually made more sense. They would have each made 2, and Sakic is a less threatening player. So actually, I wonder about this. I didn't actually look at this too closely before. I don't know why he offered this to Gang Wan rather than to Sakic. All right, well, he develops the team sports, raises population, builds the sport. Remember, this arena was a hard-fought pickup for 2 actions in place of upgrading a coal mine like 17 turns ago. He makes the team sports, grabs engineering genius, which is a bit strange. It's kind of speculative. There's no clear path for him to make a wonder at this point. Space flight's coming out. Empire State Building is rolling away. All that's left is Hollywood and internet, and he's in no position to do Hollywood. Internet's okay, though not amazing. I'm actually not sure why he needs to pay 2 actions to do this. I would have just grabbed like movies and urban growth or movies and military buildup for protection so that he can translate these ridiculous rocks that he has into culture. For his last action, he grabs urban growth. I think not taking movies was honestly kind of insane. I mean, either you're afraid of losing on military, then fine, go crazy and grab military theory or military buildup or patriotism. Or you're like, screw it, I'll be fine. But then you got to take movies so you can keep pushing your culture. I think he just takes a weird middle ground and doesn't really accomplish anything. Well, his turn is over. Sakic is up. He offers a military alliance to Gang Wan, which I am really unhappy to see because Gang Wan is currently the one who's set to overtake Sheeter, and I don't want him having 3 extra strength. Now, this could be kind of a tactical ploy, like, well, let me offer the military alliance to the strongest player, and then he's not going to want to attack me because then that will end the pact. There is perhaps some logic there, though as a player, I was not happy to see that. He researches oil for some reason, researches architecture for some reason. He's not making any buildings or anything, so there's all his science. He then upgrades to oil. He's making a similar mistake to Sheeter. He's got a lot of rocks. Now, he does have opera and journalism, but he's not going to have enough time, the game's almost over, to convert these rocks into culture. There is, of course, this bonus scoring thing for Watt. You do leave play equal to the production of your best farmer mine, but that's only 2 extra points to have oil versus coal, and it doesn't explain upgrading all of them unless you put in like impact of industry in there or something. So I do think he's just wasting a bunch of actions, pretty much accomplishing nothing on this turn. He also grabs patriotism, which makes sense for protection, and the movies to potentially turn rocks into culture. It's not a huge deal because he already has opera, and he could have done it this turn instead of researching agriculture or architecture. It's a bit of a strange line because architecture gives you rock discounts, but he's already got a ton of rocks. So it's a bit inconsistent. If he was going to do this weird oil plan for some reason, then he shouldn't have spent his science researching this. He should have spent it researching things that will let him make more culture. He also makes an air force for some raw strength. And, now Sheeter is clearly the person who is the most behind and the most vulnerable to attack. Gang Wan declares war on Sheeter. Remember, Gang Wan won that strategic colony, so he drew a bunch of cards. So it's not that unlikely or crazy that he has the wars. And this is his turn to pop off. He's in amazing shape here. He's got good culture, amazing generation, and really nice strength. He researches air forces, makes a worker. He uses his last military action to make an air force. So now he's got 43 strength. And I want to point out, he would not have been able to declare war if this were Gandhi. A war over culture costs 6 military actions against Gandhi. He could not have done it at all. Beg your pardon, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. So Sheeter with Gates has all these rocks, but he's also having a war declared on him. And that would have been somebody else. It's actually possible Gangon would have declared war on nobody because he's not really ahead enough to safely declare war on Sakich or me, though he could have, because he does have the revolutionary idea here into military theory that just came up on the third row. He could have also done fundamentalism for 6. He wouldn't have wanted to lose the science, but he could have done that for 6 instead of military theory if that hadn't shown up. So could he get away with this war against Sakich or me? It's, debatable. But he definitely would not have declared war on Sheeter if Gandhi had been in play. So I think that just illustrates the strategic misfire on Sheeter's part earlier picking his leader. Well, his turn ends. So now he's got a lot of strength, and I'm a little bit concerned. But I have to go for it. I think this is a case where you have to just go for it. If I wait anymore, the game's almost over. I gotta get my culture with Sid Meier. So I play Sid, I research computers, I upgrade 2 labs, but I don't upgrade the 3rd. And I do think that's correct. I have to respect Gang 1 here, and the fact that I only have, 2 military actions this turn and 5 next turn with military theory. What I do here is, after grabbing the reserves and patriotism, so I can beef up my shadow army, as it were, an efficient upgrade to maybe upgrade this lab cheaply next turn, I make an Air Force and a rifle. So what I'm trying to do here is discourage Gang 1 from attacking me while giving myself the ability to get these points next turn cheaply. I should actually explain that a little bit. I don't think I've talked about it in my videos before. Shadow Army is the term I use for all the strength that you could have if you diverted all of your resources to getting strength next turn. And that's a very delicate thing in the 3rd age of Through the Ages. I think it's one of the things that makes this game so strong, is that in Age 3, the game is far from over. Someone can have a lead coming out of Age 2, but it's not over in Age 3 because of this really delicious balance that you have to strive for. If you just make a bunch of strength, you might not win the game because you might not get anything out of your strength. You just got a bunch of strength and then got nothing for it. But on the other hand, if you go all in on culture, then someone else can just come beat you up. So what you have to do is try to balance it so that you're getting culture while giving yourself the ability to make a bunch of strength. And that ability can prevent people from declaring war on you without you actually having to spend any resources for it. Next turn is going to be the last turn of Age 3. It's going to be the last chance for anyone to declare war. So I just need to go one more round with Gang 1 not declaring war on me. And then I'll be able to go all in on culture. Now, am I in great shape? Nah, really. So Gang 1 is a little bit behind me. He generates a bit more culture than I do, and he's also going to steal culture from Sheeter. So at this point, I'm looking to be in 2nd place, and I figured that's fine. I got 2nd place in the other game. If I get 2nd place in this game, I'm in decent shape. It would be 2nd place to a different player. Sakich won the other game, and Sakich is looking to come in last, even with Sheeter getting beat up by Gang 1. So I will be in decent-ish shape, getting 2nd place twice. And so I figure all I need to do is just not get bombed into the Stone Age by Gang 1. Now, I only have 2 military actions, which means Gang 1 could do an aggression on me, but I think it would have been overly conservative not to upgrade this lab. Not in the least because, of course, I didn't have the military actions to actually make any more units. But the thing is, there's a lot of reasons why he might not do an aggression. He might not have an aggression. I do have a couple here that takes him out of the deck. He might not want to risk me having 2 defense cards. He might think that I played this way because I have 2 defense cards. He might find a more appealing target in someone else. Maybe Sheeter or Sakich might stay behind me. And also, he might have a good event that he wants to play instead of doing an aggression, or he might just overlook the fact that I only have 2 military actions. It's a shortcut heuristic, when you're playing the game, like, oh, who do I declare an aggression on? Oh, Boristino, this is pretty close. It's Age 3, defense cards are 6, let's just not do it. And he might not realize that, oh, actually, Boristino only has 2 military actions, so a single defense card, 6 plus 1 is 7, would actually let me get an aggression through. So I feel like that's an acceptable level of risk to balance the culture generation and my strength. I'm ready to finish this army. I can make 2 more knights and 1 rifle for a huge bump in strength because this Air Force, this raw Air Force at the moment, is here ready to double the next tactic that I fulfill. So I think that was a good turn on my part. I passed the turn. Sadly, I don't draw any cards, and I have junk. So that is the sad part about it. But we go over to Sheeter, and he's going to play the last turn of Age 3. He gets food. He grabs modern infantry so that he can make his shock troops current. He's fortunate that came out instead of being one of the last 2 cards, but he's still way behind Gang 1. He does have a ton of rocks, but military actions are going to be his limiting reagent here. Even if he had and also civil actions to make workers. So even though he has enough rocks to make another army, actually, does he? 7 plus 15? 22. Yeah, he has enough rocks to make another army, but he doesn't have the civil actions or the military actions to actually generate enough workers and then build 4 more military units. Well, he does his best. He raises population, makes another modern infantry just for 5 raw strength, so he's going to have 8 plus 5, 13 culture stolen by Gang 1. And then he's out. That took his whole turn, so he passes it. And at this point in the game, everybody loses their goddamn minds. So the turn passes, we hit H4, a whole bunch of crap happens, and people just go nuts. Some kind of mind virus escapes the lab, and Sakic, to kick things off, declares a hybrid war on me. Now that is correct. Sakic is 6 strength behind me and declares a hybrid war. What is Sakic's master plan with this come-from-behind war? Well, he raises population a few times, and puts the internet under construction, so ultimate boss move here, doing a wonder, while also declaring a war. And then plays patriotism, so he's got 3 military actions and 15 rocks to spend. He doesn't do anything super crazy. He just makes 2 cannons, and that's that. Just another 6 plus 5 is 11 strength. Or 6 plus 5. 6 plus 5 is 11 strength. 2 rifles, 2 cannon. And then, he did have an Air Force there, so it's not 11, it's actually 16 strength, because the tactic counts twice. So he goes from 34 to 50. Now, going up against someone with only a 10 strength difference, that is the definition of thin value. The really strange thing, though, is that I can beat him. It happens often enough that a war is declared, and the person who is declared against wins the war, but usually it's because they have some tactic or some card shows up or some event gets flipped. None of those things happen here. Just by public information, you can see that I have enough rocks and military actions to get military theory, 2 knights, and a rifleman, which counts this 8-point tactic 2 times with the air forces here and go up to 68 strength. Now, Sakic has the castle, so he ends up sacrificing a warrior here, so okay, it's not 18 strength difference, it's a 17 strength difference, but still, 17 is a lot. So why would Sakic do this when it's pretty evident that I'm going to be able to beat him? Well, I think this may have been a kind of tactical move. If you look at the standings, he's really far behind on culture and generation, so it could just be like a kind of weird gamble, where he's saying, okay, maybe Borystina is not going to be willing to go into revolt in order to beat me in this war. Maybe Borystina will just choose to get 3 workers or maybe raise population, build a temple to stop the uprising, not win the war, and I get to steal a little bit of culture from him. Maybe that was the thinking. And it's not a horrible gamble because, yeah, I could steal 17 culture from Sakic and go up 34 points against him, but that's only 17 points against everyone else, and it's not really 17 because when you go into revolt, you don't generate any of your stuff. You don't make your food, rock, science, or culture. So it's like 17 minus 10. It's really only 7 points, and it's actually less if you consider, for example, I could have upgraded this lab, and that would have been an extra 2 points there. So it's really 5 points against everybody if you count it all out. Maybe he just thought that wasn't going to be worth it, and that I would instead just rather, upgrade the lab and move on with my day. So it's not a completely necessarily wrong play. We could say that this is someone who's behind and taking a risk. When you're behind, take risks. Okay. Unluckily for Sakic, Gang 1 is the next to catch the mind virus. And on his turn, Gang 1 declares war on me as well. And I think this is actually the biggest blunder of the game. And at this point, I've actually finished playing all my games with Gang 1. I think this is Gang 1's biggest blunder of the entire round. This might be just the biggest blunder anyone has made in any of the games. Although, obviously Sheeter has had some very strange moves and would compete for that title. But the thing is, he could declare war on Sheeter again. Sheeter, doesn't have a whole lot that he could do besides, make another instance of shock troops. So if Gang 1 pushes his strength a lot, which he's going to because he's planning to declare war, he might be able to beat Sheeter. Now, I didn't count this all out, but he could do that. He could also try to declare war on Sakich. Sakich only has 4 military actions, so, it would be difficult for him with just the fortifications to get a whole lot of strength, or just declare war on nobody, just play an event, or try to do an aggression. But declaring war on me makes very little sense, and this is actually a bigger mistake than what Sakich arguably did. It may not look like it, because if we look at his turn, what he does actually is he steals Sheeter's shock troops, and they are up to date because of the modern infantry. So he goes up to 62 strength. He actually could have done a little bit more, but he ran out of military actions. So he's at 62, so you might say, well, this is surely not as big of a mistake as Sakich declaring war, but I think it's actually a bigger one for a few reasons. First of all, this is a war over culture, so the winner takes the strength difference plus 5 from the other person. So this 12-point difference is really only a 7 strength point difference. On top of that, remember, Sakich does have the Himeji Castle. So when Sakich sacrifices a warrior as the aggressor, not only does his strength go up by 1, but he also gains 3 culture, which reduces further how much of a difference this is. It's 12 minus 5, which is 7, minus 1, which is 6. And then you also kind of subtract a 3. It only goes in one direction, so I still steal the full strength from Sakich, but then he gets 3 culture back, essentially, from the war. So it's not a huge difference between the two of them, but it's a bigger deal because when it was just Sakich declaring war on me, I can face an uprising and steal a bunch of culture from the person who's losing while missing out on culture from my own generation and not really go that much up against my other opponents. But when Gangwon then also feeds me culture, that suddenly becomes an amazing deal. I'm basically getting a wonder's worth of culture for free because I'm also stealing points from Gangwon. That helps me indirectly against Sheeter and Sakich, and it also doubly helps me directly against Gangwon. When I steal 11 culture from him, that is a 22-point swing against him specifically, and remember, he was the most threatening player at this point to win the game, after beating up Sheeter and also having the highest culture generation. So this is a huge mistake. I think either Gangwon just did a shortcut heuristic, oh, Boristina's screwed, she's not going to be able to do anything, or maybe he forgot that you could deal with an uprising, just accept an uprising and build up your strength. But again, there are no tricks here. It is just purely face-up public information that I can get higher than 62 strength. With his last 2 actions, Gangwon grabs mechanized agriculture and rockets, which is whatever, it doesn't really matter that much, and we pass the turn. On my turn, I do the obvious thing. I get military theory, I play patriotism and reserves for rocks, I raise the population, then I blow up a lab and a mine. I could have considered blowing up 2 mines instead of blowing up the lab. So the lab is not producing anything this turn because of uprising, but I could have kept it for next turn to efficiently upgrade it to the final lab. But I don't do that. I blow up the lab, and then I just make my army. In fact, I could have blown up another thing and used 4 rocks to make another knight for another 2 points stolen from Sakich and another 2 points stolen from Gangwon, and that may have actually been the correct thing to do. I grab Urban Growth instead, so that with these 2 cards next turn, I can make a temple and upgrade it to an H2 temple for free. It's debatable whether that was correct, but here we go. I'm uprising, I don't produce anything, and Sheeter's watching this going, what the hell's going on? And then he flips immigration, which sucks, because the happy faces that I'm losing from the hybrid war actually count against this, so I'm going to end up losing 2 workers because of the temporary loss of happy faces. It's an interaction I've never seen before, and it's super annoying. Well, anyway, Sheeter grabs democracy, blows up a mine. He actually blows up all of his mines comedically, and then he just makes a bunch of troops. So it's possible that he put impact of competition in here and is getting points from all of these troops that he's making. He also grabs multimedia, which you can't research, tanks, and blows up a temple to make another arena. So it looks like the impact of competition, which gives points for arenas as well as units, is in the deck. He passes the turn. It's over to Sakich. Sakich gives me my 17 points after sacrificing a warrior with the castle. On his last turn, he actually, has a pretty significant last turn here. He takes and plays Chaplain, who's just sitting there, gets the movies down, and with his crazy rocks, he makes a couple of movies. So now his culture generation is fantastic, but, it's a little bit too little, a little bit too late, and his turn is over. He never did finish the internet, though I think the move that he made a lot more sense. All right, so I steal 11 points from Gangwon. He plays an event. We get progress popping up, which actually is pretty good for Gangwon himself. So he may be the one who put it in there, or may not. I wish the game showed you when you do a replay who put it in. He plays pro sports, blows up a lab and turns it into a pro sport. And that's interesting, because he's not making an opera. The opera would have been for culture, but instead he makes a pro sports, which is no culture. Now this makes me think either that he put impact of competition here or impact of architecture, either of which would make this be worth 3 points. Now, it's probably not the impact of architecture, because impact of architecture would make an opera be worth 2 points, and the opera is worth 4 points. So just for raw culture. So it really makes it look like impact of competition specifically is in here because of this play. Or maybe he's copying Sheeter and he's got like a sick read, the same read that I got, that, okay, Sheeter is going crazy making units, so maybe impact of competition's in there. Either way, a little bit of a strange move, but he also upgrades Swordsman to H3, so maybe he's vying for impact of strength as well by getting the 4 strength from the sports and then the extra strength from this modern infantry. On my turn, I do an aggression against Sakic, and I'm relieved that he does not have the crazy pile of defense cards he would have needed to block it. With the stuff that I steal from him, I blow up my mine. I make another Air Force just for the raw strength, so this is in case someone put impact of strength or impact of competition, which it seems like is in the deck. Then I raise population, build a free temple with urban growth, and then efficiently upgraded for free with efficient upgrade. With my last 4 actions, I got nothing to do. So we end the turn. And so going into the final scoring, notice what happens. I start off in the lead. We get impact of government, which is mostly a wash. After that comes impact of competition, which we all saw coming thanks to Sheeter's telegraphing, perhaps. Or maybe it was Gangwon who put it in, I don't know. But that one is mostly a wash. Impact of architecture, again, pretty much a nothing burger. There are a couple of big events, though, that make a difference. So agriculture, Gangwon gets a pretty nice bonus relative to me from that one. I'm pretty much the only one who sucks at it, but looking at just like how the top 2 are going to shake out, that's a significant one. And then the last one, impact of variety, is also really good for Gangwon. So he actually ends up less than 10 points away from me. Had he just done nothing, had he literally just not declared that war, he would have won this game. But as it is, I get to sneak out a very narrow win, with actually Sheeter not too far behind, thanks to Gangwon's self-sabotage. There we go. So at this point, I'm in pretty great shape. I won one of the 4-player games, and I got second in the other one. So things are looking good for me further in the tournament. The 3-player games will be coming up next. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.